let's go ahead and get started. I think Tori just joined us here. So we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Tyler, if you haven't already, go ahead and start recording. Are there any announcements? See none, we'll move on to public comment. Penny, is there any public comment?
I was not made aware of any.
Hey,
Troy,
Eddie, sorry.
Go ahead.
This might be it's really a public comment as much as it's someone that wants to get on the agenda next month. Is that now would be the time to talk about it or wait?
Or what, Troy?
I have someone that wants to get on the agenda for next month. Is this the time to talk about it or wait until?
Let's go ahead and knock it out now.
Okay, the Kansas Single Track organization has been working with Larry since 2019 to try to get the canoe launch. I know Larry's not there. I don't know if Troy Houtman knows anything about it, but they want to get on the board or get on the agenda to come meet and present. They'd like to. They've kind of been working on this for a year. They'd like to get it moving forward.
So just to let you know that Larry is not in our department. So if somebody wants to do something official, they need to come through our department, not through Larry. And yes, we know about the project. We know what their work. Actually, I think the area that they're looking on is actually not in parkland, but we would love to hear what their ideas are. I've already shared that thought with them many times, so it would be great for them to come and share that information with the rest of the park board.
So how does it get on the agenda?
He just makes a request either through us, and when I meet with Eddie, we put it on the agenda, or you can ask right now, and then Penny will put it on the agenda if everybody agrees to it.
Okay, I'm asking to put on the agenda for next month, to put Andy Cram, CRAMV, with the Kansas Single Track organization. Please.
Do we need a motion for that, Troy? I don't think we do. But
I don't think you do. You just need to say or tell us and order us or request us to put it on the agenda.
Okay, well, that's a good enough request for me. Thanks, Troy. We will make sure that's done. Are we able to properly socially distance if they want to come in and present? I'm assuming at City Hall.
So what we set up for next month is still a virtual. So we'll have to do something online. If they want to send us their presentation, we can manage it through here, and they could talk through it. If there's a document or a PowerPoint, Penny can click on each slide, and they could talk us through it.
Okay, he has that information, so I'll pass this on to him, and I'll send Penny his email address and vice versa. So he thought he was supposed to be talking to Larry. That's who he's been talking to. So if Larry didn't tell him to come talk to you, then I don't know. But
last time I knew that the Parks and Recreation Department was run by the Parks and Recreation Director. So maybe that changed. I don't know.
Well, I wasn't part of it, so I appreciate your comment. But if Larry is supposed to be in charge of it or not in charge of it, he should have told this group this and not waited for this group to reach out to a park board member, because he wasn't getting anywhere with apparently the park.
Well, he's not part of parks.
This is Penny. I just got a call from Andy earlier this afternoon, and he's supposed to be emailing me the information.
Great.
Okay, so we'll get that on the agenda for next month, as long as they're okay with presenting it virtually. I'm not sure we're going to have a choice, however. So let's get that on the agenda for next month and move forward unless there's any other public comment. Did everybody have a chance to read and review the minutes from June 8th? Are there any clarifications or edits that need to be made? See none. I would move to approve the minutes from June 8th.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New items. Gentry, are you ready to talk about the bee habitat?
Yeah, you bet. Can you hear me okay, or should I take my mask off?
I got you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So this agreement really is an effort between the city and Barkman Honey, a private business, to promote the importance of pollinators, bees in particular, to the public. This is an agreement that we're putting in place to actually place beehives in certain park locations in exchange of in-kind services provided by Barkman Honey. They are doing this through an effort called Bee-Sponsible, B-E-Sponsible, like responsible. And it's an effort to connect the local community to engage in bee-friendly actions. So we're going to start with just 1 or 2 hives in a couple locations, one of them being at Clap, just to place it there and see where this agreement goes. The city is going to provide access to these locations to allow for Barkman Honey to go in there and monitor the hive health and do other related activities like programming, classes, that kind of thing. The city will provide specific locations, determining what's best for them to come and access, and keeping it free from a lot of like public activity and also staff activity. Barkman will be responsible for the ongoing maintenance as well as ownership of the hives. And so as far as liability or insurance goes, Beth from Law Department thinks or believes that recreational use immunity will be in place if anybody is injured or stung. If there's any questions on that, Beth can talk more about it, certainly more so than I can. And so really, we don't have an agreement written up yet. We're working on it right now with the law department, but we'd love to get a support of the philosophy from the park board on this. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm sure Beth is also happy to help answer questions.
Are there any questions for Gentry about Bee-Sponsible? I love that name, by the way.
Just to let you guys know, one of our core efforts is to have environmental impacts in a positive manner, educating folks about our environment. And so these are some of the foundations for doing some of that work. And we expect it to go a little bit larger as we continue forward.
Certainly looks like it's off to a good start. No comments or questions for Gentry or Troy on this? See none. Thank you, Gentry. Moving forward, there was a request by a board member that I believe originated from other interested parties.
Hey, Eddie, can you hold on just a second? This is Gentry.
Yeah.
Can we get a vote on the support of the philosophy for the agreement? I'm sorry, I should have.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Timed you before we moved on.
I would move to approve.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you, Gentry. Sorry about that. All right. As I was saying, we were at request. We'd like to take another look at the Parks and Recreation budget. We'll let staff kind of give us another breakdown of this, and then we'll discuss as a board. So I'll let you guys take it away. Elizabeth?
Hi. Hey, Penny, can you give me access to sharing this presentation? Is that possible?
Maybe.
As soon as I figure out how.
Maybe if you go to her icon.
I think, well, just a sec, maybe I can try. Let me go see if I can try to share. Okay, and then our presentation. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, super, terrific. I'm getting better at this. Okay, well, my name's Elizabeth Goldtree. I'm the budget officer in the finance department. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the budget development thus far. We're kind of in a funny moment because we're about ready to print the proposed budget. So that hasn't been presented yet. It'll be presented next Tuesday at the City Council meeting. So this will give you an overview of some of the fundamentals that we're working with. So it sounds like you were expecting something a little different, and I apologize. This is similar to what I've been presenting at other community groups.
Ty, is this similar to what you want to see?
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so it's hard to.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay, so just a brief overview. This is, the City Council had 2 retreats in April and a 3rd in May. So this is really a distillation of that information so far. It's an overview of economic conditions and how they impact our local government budget. Overview of the budget process, and I will share some of the results from the social media town hall with you all. And then the impact on revenue and some of the options that have been considered to balance the general fund. So as I said, there were retreats on April 7th and 21st. We started in April with looking at what the revenue impacts of the stay-at-home order and the the global economic impact on our regional economy. And then on May 26th, 90 options to balance the general fund were presented to the City Council. Some of those options were yes, some were no, and some were that's interesting, let's talk to people. So we took those ideas to the DAB presentations and used them in the online budget simulator that ran for a couple weeks in June. And then also the social media town hall, which we had on the 23rd, but the polling was open until the 30th. So the calendar for the rest of the next 2 months is that the budget will be presented on Tuesday, and that's when the maximum taxes to be levied are set for the year, and it opens the public hearing process on the budget. The second public hearing will be on August 4th, and then on August 11th is the final public hearing and the adoption of the budget in accordance with state statute. So back to the public hearings, 2 are required by state statute. The one on August 4th is a bonus of sorts that we've put in between the time the budget is printed and then the time the budget is adopted. So it gives us some time to recalibrate if needed. The budget simulator, last year, people had the option of increasing and decreasing services. This year, we started with a imbalanced budget of, I think it was $4.7 million out of balance, and participants could keep services the same or reduce them in order to balance the budget. And that was a really interesting exercise given a lot of the discussion that's been going on as a nation right now. And then the social media town hall, that took 6 topics that were on the list of 90 and presented them as either or concepts, and we got a lot of feedback through Nextdoor, Facebook, and Twitter. So back to the economy, we're really in uncharted waters. We know that we're in an economic downturn. Officially, the U.S. recession was dated as starting in February of 2020. But we just don't know the severity and the duration of this downturn. Its impact on the global demand for air travel will obviously have a large impact on our regional economy. And then on the expenditure side, this impacts us. Sometimes, in some cases, it's a favorable impact, but in a lot of cases, it's not favorable. And the potential for federal support at this point is unclear. We have been in the process of applying for grant funding from Sedgwick County since we barely missed the cutoff for being a direct recipient, but we haven't received an award yet. So this budget, some of our federal programs have received awards, but as far as our our taxing funds, we have not received any awards yet. So just an overview of how the general fund revenue works. Our largest source of revenue is property tax, and we expect that actually to be a strong performer this year and next year, barring any dramatic increase in delinquencies. Our second largest revenue source is franchise fees. We're expecting some weakness there. I can't remember the numbers, but nationwide, there's different grids in different parts of the country, and there have been some declines in energy consumption in the central grid during the stay-at-home time. Sales tax, there's only a 2-month lag between when sales happen and when we receive the sales tax, so we're expecting a dramatic decrease this year. Motor fuel tax is pegged to gallons consumed. Usually when the price is as low as it is, it goes up because people's driving behavior, it induces driving. But for a period of time, people really had nowhere to go. Motor vehicle tax is another one of our very economically sensitive revenue sources. Given the uncertainty, it would make sense for people not to go out and purchase a new car. Other sources of revenue are fines and penalties. It was absolutely unprecedented that municipal court was closed for the amount of time that it was, for example. And then to have recreation centers, Century 2, and so forth closed, that impacts rental income and fees for services. So, and options to balance the general fund, the initial loss projection was 17 million. By the time we launched the simulator, we were down to about 5. We will be presenting a balanced budget for 2021. Department staff developed options to align the general fund revenues and expenditures. And just as a point of comparison, like normally a budget grows over time, but we're expecting at this point that between the adopted, we're expecting it's going to be close to where the actual expense was last year. But of course, you have to keep in mind that there's things that just continue to grow. So we have to cut in order to get to that. And the entire time that we worked through this, we were guided by our mission and goals, as well as the values. And I don't know how long you all have been involved with the park board or your involvement with the budget process, but in 2016, we started a zero-based budgeting effort. And in 2018, the city council affirmed what were called, every department ranked their services and then designated some of them as being untouchable. So that exercise really guided this process. For example, in the police department, animal control field service is considered untouchable because that's something that the city of Wichita is the only agency that does that, but then the animal shelter is not because there are other community service providers who do that. Or in the park department, grounds maintenance is considered untouchable because that is absolutely intrinsic to a park department. Like it'd be hard to find a park department that doesn't maintain parks. But there are other ancillary park activities that aren't designated that way because you could find a park department that doesn't do those services. So unfortunately, we really had to dig in and look at that for this budget. So on that list of 90 things, we broke them into 4 groups. A lot of technical adjustments, a lot of those were this year. And the tier 1s weren't too hard. And then as we got farther in, we start talking about serious and significant service reductions. For example, the park department presented their ideas ended up on this list, such as discontinuing planting trees during this time and instead using those crews to remove trees, and then also reducing mowing cycles. So this is an illustration of how that worked. So as you see in 2020, we get a lot of savings that are the tier zeros, the easier savings. But when you get to 2022, you really have to start looking at the difficult decisions. And a lot of those are related to wages. So at this point, we don't have any wage reductions modeled into the budget, but we have a ton of hiring, we're in a hiring freeze right now. But in 2022, to close that gap, one of the things that would have to be discussed is whether or not to just how to deal with wage increases. So some of the things we talked about on May 26th, code enforcement, the perennial tall grass and weeds versus housing. Like I said, the tree planting, the tree removals, library materials was one that was suggested by the library, reducing that. And then street expansion versus street maintenance. So, and Troy Houtman can speak to this too, but early on in the process, I would say maybe in late April or early May, the CIP committee got together and looked at project deferrals. And how that helps with the general fund is that you can shift mill levy from the debt service fund back to the general fund. So in the CIP, there'll be a lot of projects that are deferred they're more expansion related projects that don't have any leverage, and they've not been initiated yet. And off the top of my head, I cannot think of any park projects, Troy. But I know that the aquatics master plan is not one of them. But that was one of the things we talked about. So that's where that street maintenance, street expansion comes from, because there's a lot of street expansion projects that are pushed back.
To talk a little bit about the capital projects for this year, 2020, we initiated a lot of the projects at the very, very beginning of the year. So we'd already put in the process and were able to continue with some of those projects. I think there's only been a couple projects in 2020 that we were wanting to do that we're not going to get done. Obviously, the Aquatics Master Plan is a huge project that we wanted to get done. Has a lot of impact on a lot of different levels, and so that one's still moving forward. In fact, the only thing I can think of is probably some smaller projects in regards to trails or some smaller.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Some building repairs, and those will probably get deferred till next year.
Yeah.
Now, next year's request, we had a whole slew of items that we requested that we're not going to move forward with next year. Just some of the basic maintenance that we have. Typically, we always have playgrounds. Typically, we always have some building repairs, and those are probably in the $400,000 range. So a really, really small amount compared to what we've been getting in the millions of dollars worth of projects. So it's going to make a huge difference next year in regards to the amount of projects that we're going to initiate.
Yeah. And the other thing too is in the entire CIP, there's only 5 new projects. Usually there are more than 5 new projects. There's one for a bridge that is showing signs of failure from a bridge inspection. I mean, they're pretty big projects. There's a good, they really rose to the top, but it's an unusual CIP in that sense. But that process that the CIP committee went through really was a big step forward in being able to balance the general fund. And then what we have modeled for now is that half mil shift for 21 and 22, but then going back to where we were in 2020, starting in 23. So we'll have to see. We'll just have to see how things perform. It's an interesting time to be living and budgeting in. So the online budget simulator was from June 12th to 30th. Like I said, there were 16 things. We had a lot higher participation, I think, because it was a shorter list of things to get through, and it's just it's a much more salient topic than it was last year. And we'll be publishing those results later. In the park and recreation service in the simulator, were park maintenance, which that's going back to the mowing cycles, street and park trees, and then recreation, which was related to hours. and they all performed about the same. The social media town hall, those polls were open a week, so I don't know if any of you had a chance to weigh in. We had about 10,000 responses, it was really interesting. And there were 6 topics related. There were 6 topics in total, and 2 were related to Park and Rec. So, and this is information, you could put this together if you were to go get on Twitter and put Facebook together next door. So I'm going to go ahead and share it with you today. The first was on tree planting and tree removals. So this one cracks me up because my sister and brother-in-law both participated and both voted different. I was like, did you guys know you were opposites? But I was kind of surprised on how close this one was. So the prioritized dead tree removals, that's the plan that the park department put together, and then prioritize planting new trees, which is more of our status quo approach. And then park mowing and right-of-way mowing, the reduced mowing and right-of-way was, well, the park department proposed both of these concepts as part of the 90 items. So we were just interested in getting feedback from residents on what they would prioritize, and that does not add up to 100. But I need to go. I'm so sorry. But anyhow, you get the idea. So that's just where we are on the budget right now. You know, it's been a rocky year to put a budget together. I'm really grateful to the park department they really did deliver some great ideas and were really helpful during the CIP process. So Troy, I don't know if you have anything to add.
So I guess I just have a question. So in these discussions, you know, we're of course an enterprise fund with golf. But we have this albatross, this debt hanging over our head with golf. And based on what I've seen the last few years I've been involved, I'm not sure we're ever going to have the revenue to actually, you know, chip away at that and pay it off. So with these kind of big picture discussions about, you know, finances and the city's economic future, is there an opportunity to kind of fold this into some of those discussions? Because, you know, unless there's some dramatic changes, I think most of us would agree, you know, we're not going to be making payments on that debt anytime soon.
Right. I don't think we have anticipated any revenue from the golf fund into the debt service fund in this budget. So it's still, I believe, listed as a due to, but that's not included in this budget.
Ty? So Elizabeth is absolutely correct. In the past couple of years, we have not paid into this debt whatsoever. And until something changes on a council level, it's going to continue to be there. I know that Councilmember Claycomb, I don't know, it was probably 8-10 months ago, had mentioned it when we had brought one of the items to golf. Actually, it was last summer when we ended up closing CLAP. There was a discussion in regards to, at the council level, what can we do about this, and is this something that we can do? Since then, I haven't heard anything or been asked anything since then. So, I think that's something that we want the council to address and make a decision one way or the other, because at times we've had support on relieving that debt, and at other times we've had no support. So still kind of up in the air, but would love to find out, get some solid answers on that in the future. And to add on a few more things, talking about the general fund budget, as you guys recall, when I gave you guys a little bit of background back in April, we were able to, it was really nice that Elizabeth was able to put up all the tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And when you get down to tier 3 and tier 4, you're talking about reducing staff. Actually, not the numbers, but there's actually one in regards to the activities.
I don't think yeah.
Like the low-hanging fruit,
Mm-hmm.
Savings in regards to efficiencies and stuff like that. But anyways, my point is, for 2020 and 2021, all of our offers back to the budget office did not include any staff reductions. Now, whether that happens or not, that's still yet to be determined. We still have a long ways to go before we finalize the budget. And even at that, things can change very quickly, and we might have to do something drastic. But my number one priority was to make sure that we weren't losing staff and losing ground in those regards, because once we lose staff, it's really, really difficult to bring those back.
Mr. Chairman? Eddie?
Yes, sir.
I had a couple of comments and questions. First one is the reference to the county getting all the relief money, and as Elizabeth said, the city just missed the cut on getting that. If there isn't a better argument for unified government than that, I can't imagine what it would be. The fact that we have a park department, what's your budget, 17 million?
18.
It's a huge enterprise, and it's a vital part of the community, and it's left out of the picture while the money goes to the county commission, who has no responsibility for anything. So that's just my soapbox for the minute. We need unified government. This just shows how flawed the system is. We're going to get screwed, literally, on that one. The second question I had was about the park board's role in all this. Our website says that the park board's responsibility is to participate in the budget planning. There is no real opportunity for that. This is a great presentation, but did I miss something where the park board participated in any of the discussions that led to your prioritizing what might get cut, what might get changed? I just wonder about, I'm new to the board.
Yeah.
But looking back, I've never seen where the park board really does anything to weigh in on this process except rubber stamp what comes from the staff and goes to the council.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if you want to answer, Troy Houtman, or if you'd like me to give examples from other boards.
I would like to share something. I think it was back in April, I did share with the park board what were some of our objectives and what was my ultimate goal. And it kind of repeats what I just mentioned a little while ago, was that I had highlighted savings in regards to closing the pools. I highlighted savings in regards to some of our contracts, going back to our tree contracts, and that meeting that goal of just over 900,000, close to $1 million. So I did share that with the park board, and I did ask for the park board support, and you guys voted on it. So that was pretty general, and that was back in April. That kind of helped me move those things forward to the budget office.
I understand that, Troy, and appreciate that, but in the deliberative process, there's never been an opportunity where park board members sat down, were given discretionary items to consider what's right, what's wrong. We are representative of a process that flows from the elected officials. I love that social media town hall. That's great. There's 10,000 people that got to weigh in. We didn't, not in any substantive fashion. It just seems to be a contradiction of what the mission of the park board is as expressed on our webpage. But as I said, this is my first year. I'm new to it. It just seemed like this is all fine, but we're just here to rubber stamp and never participated in a deliberative, for example, your retreat on the 26th. Any park board members involved in that?
No, it was, there were only people that, sorry, it was a city council retreat. So it was the city council and a few staff, but it was, all three of those were broadcast on City 7 and they were on YouTube.
You know, a big part of this, Dale, is that connection with the park board member connecting with the council. The council is the one that ultimately responsible for the budget. And although you guys have a great deal in regards to sharing what's happening out there in your communities, and advisory capability, if you have that advisory, we need to know about it. And we can always have that as a continuous discussion. It doesn't have to just be in regards to the budget season.
Yeah, and there are boards that the board provides a memo or recommendation to the city manager and to the city council. It doesn't come from staff, it comes from the board itself. So, you know, if there's an instance where the board feels strongly about recommending something because of a strategic plan or something along the lines, there would be nothing to prevent them from doing that.
I'd like to speak. This is Hoyt. Sorry it took a couple of minutes for me to sign on. I didn't get here till 3:15. but I have been talking with my council members, and I do appreciate that you're looking at maintenance and maybe keeping maintenance as a key item. That was one of the big things that several of the council members that I spoke to were interested in. They're concerned that the parks as well as the golf system maintain the quality of maintenance that they've had in the past. There was one issue that I had understood was that particularly in the maintenance of the golf courses, their maintenance budget really hasn't grown significantly since 2006, and where staff and some of the other kinds of things have grown considerably. And so just in order to maintain the golf system going forward, I would say that would be a priority.
And I appreciate that perspective, Hoyt. And that is the kind of decision it would seem like the park board should endorse if it's a choice between a maintenance program that preserves the status quo, and that's done at the expense of cuts elsewhere in the budget. Wouldn't the staff appreciate having the endorsement of the park board, and the park board having the opportunity to review those, consider them, and then take a formal position on it? Otherwise, I don't know what our role would be. Is that not an appropriate role for the park board?
I don't know. I've simply been talking to councilmen about the topic, and I know it's of their concern, and I know we don't normally chime in, but I think it's about time we do so.
Are there any other members of the park board that feel as though the park board should have a greater involvement in the deliberative process as well as just reviewing the final product?
Maybe we
Dale,
should
I've been on
change
this
our
park
chart.
board. Sorry. I was going to say I've been on this park board for quite a while, and that's all we've been is just kind of the sounding board and give our opinion, and that's about as far as it goes.
But as a body, I've never seen that really expressed other than just in the final product. I mean, the website says our mission is to participate in this budget process. I just wondered that down the road, you're looking at some really tough decisions. That Elizabeth laid those out. Those tier 3 and 4 things are significant. When you have to get to that number, you're making some very drastic changes that have an impact on the public. Would you not want the public's representatives to have weighed in on that before those decisions are made?
And I'm agreeing with you on that, Dale, is what I was trying to say. Is that
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what that model looks like. It's something that has to evolve from leadership and from experience. But I think Hoyt brings a great example to the table. Maintenance at the expense of what? And we should be shown that before we endorse the final product. I had one other question for Elizabeth. Of the 10,000 respondents, were all those unique responses, or are those repeat performers?
It is interesting. It is possible that people would log on to Twitter, Facebook, and Nextdoor and participate in all three. But once you have voted, you can only vote once, because we would get comments from people that said that they voted and then they read the comments and they wanted to change and they couldn't. Okay. So they weren't multiple. Does that help answer your question?
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
lastly,
and Nextdoor. Oh, sorry.
On the aquatics, I wasn't clear what that final message was. Is the aquatics plan funded continually going forward?
Yeah, it's actually been accelerated. So all the pools, all the renovations will be ready for next year. We made that decision, or the decision was made. We modeled it in.
So the priority of funding aquatics at the expense of other cuts that's a decision that's been made internally?
Well,
So-
what the situation with the swimming pools are closed for this year, and as are the splash pads. And so for, social distancing, really. And so Troy can speak to it more. It's kind of it's a plus minus. Being closer this year allows for the acceleration of the construction.
So a couple of things, if you don't mind. Two different items. We got capital dollars that we're talking about, and we're talking about operational dollars. Being so many uncertainties in regards to COVID at the very beginning of the summer, not knowing how we're going to manage that. Some folks across the country have opened up their swimming pools. My wife, she works down in Derby. She opened up Rock River Rapids, and they're operating at, I think, at 40% capacity, or maybe even a little bit less. So they're actually taking a loss just to operate it, but also they're taking risk as well. So knowing that we needed to make some savings this year, operational wise, knowing that several of our pools are going to be closed this summer for capital projects, knowing that we didn't have all the answers at the beginning of the summer, we closed our swimming pools, and to get a savings of $450,000, somewhere around there. That's a round number. So that was operational wise. Capital wise, we'd been working on this aquatics master plan for close to 10 years. We've gone through 10 different ideations of it, and it's morphed and changed and came back to a different level and back and forth. We finally found an equation that worked in regards to spending the $22 million. And so we moved forward with that, and we were able to get phase 1, A, B, and phase 2 moving. Now, we ended up being over budget in regards to the estimates for the project. We're anticipating we're going to need another $2 to $3 million to finish the entire project. And that's something that we're going to look at again in a year and a half in the next year's cycle for the next year's CIP budget. So we'll see what happens at that point in time.
So is the CIP budget for aquatics held harmless through this process, or is it subject to periodic review as to whether it continues as described or maybe redirected into other purposes?
So it was, I think this is the vision of the council to move forward with it and to actually accomplish that project. Wasn't necessarily any money taken away from that capital project.
Yeah.
That would seem to be an appropriate consideration for the park board in future months, is to look at those commitments and see whether those are still appropriate given the hard path you've been compelled to follow here.
By all means, you're more than...
I believe that in cases where there's already a contract in place, we didn't consider those for deferral.
Mm-hmm.
Is that...
We haven't bid phase 2 yet, so that's not 100% true, but phase 1 was definitely under contract to move that forward. But Dale, to answer your question, if we want to go through each one of the CIP projects and you guys want to weigh in on that, I just need to get the direction of what you guys want.
Well, it'd be useful in future meetings to put on the table what choices you are facing and let us kind of weigh in on them. If you have to, it's the wisdom of Solomon here, what you're going to put away and what you're going to sustain. If we're not going to do that, then there's not much, I think that's the point of the park board, is to help you make those decisions. Thank you.
So Elizabeth, I think you covered
Okay.
everything well. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, definitely everybody tune in next week. The budget will definitely be online by Tuesday, if not sooner than that. We are working hard to get that done, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. So thanks for your time and attention. And I'm going to sign off now so you can carry on. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your help.
Is there any further discussion with the park board members? Any questions for Troy on this? Any thoughts? See none.
But
Dale,
Eddie, one last
motion
thought.
or
If perhaps for next year, in this process through April, May, June, that some of those discretionary items you're considering for that point, the 2022 budget, will be brought forward so we know what's going on before it gets to a final printed product when it's very hard to change. Thank you.
okay. Troy, is that something that we can do moving forward?
Most definitely. Whatever you guys request, I provide that information, provide those details. If there's a certain reports you guys want, there's certain financial details you want, whatever it is you want, feel free to request it and I'll make sure to provide it.
Thank you.
I think staff is doing a tremendous job. For example, a couple of weeks ago, the Golf Advisory Committee met and showed up with basically what looked like a phone book of information. So they get it done. They just need a little direction. So Dale, thank you. Hoyt, Troy, thanks to everybody for your input, and we'll keep working at it. So anything else on this? We'll see none, and we will move forward to the recreation update. Is Reggie here?
I have a question before Reggie starts, may I?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, are we, I guess we kind of went right on over the GAC deep dive that was discussed.
Hoyt, can we get into that during the golf update?
Oh, excuse me, pardon me, I didn't have the agenda in front of me at the moment, so that.
No, it's fine. I didn't know if it was directed at the previous discussion we just had about the budget, or.
No, that's
I
fine.
was planning on diving into it deeper on item 5.
Okay, good, I'm ready for item 5. I want to hear Reggie.
Take it away, Reggie.
I don't know how to share it.
Screen share.
Good.
Are you guys able to see the presentation on the screen?
Yep.
I want to give kind of a basic update of some of the things that's been taking place since we opened our facility starting back on June the 1st. As you guys know, we had a furlough period where our centers and our programs were canceled from mid-March up into the beginning of June. So athletics has been really busy during that time frame. Kind of gives you an overview of some of the tournaments and things that we hosted during that time frame with some really good attendance. So every weekend during the month of June, we've had tournaments that have taken place there at site, as well as we did some tournaments over at McAdams at the Thurman Field there, as well as hosted some tournaments over at the Westside Athletic Fields with some of the high school teams in the area. So one of the good things about that, we did implement some precautions for COVID with social distancing and making sure that we had individuals who may have been in other areas where there were high rising areas weren't participating in some of the tournaments here locally, as well as we streamlined some of the processes with the registration process, as well as putting out distancing signs and things like that we implemented to make sure that we stay within those guidelines for social distancing. We finished up June with great participation with a lot of the programs that we had in place, and we were able to also get some of those teams that missed out on some of their spring sports in the area to be able to participate this summer as well.
Should be able to just click it. I use the, there. Oh. Right. not working.
So next up, Linwood Rec Center. One of the things that we started back up at the end of June as well was opening up our summer camps with 50% capacity of what we would normally have each summer. We went through some training and worked directly with getting some guidelines from the health department as well as KDHE. Did an overall staff training that we did with what those safety protocols were that we were implementing, and have moved forward with some of those things that we've done to make sure we created a safe environment for those individuals who are participating in our camps. So we're averaging roughly around 40 kids at each of the camps this summer. We typically were in the 90 to 100 range, so we cut it in half to make sure that we're able to stay within those guidelines that we feel comfortable with moving forward. We continue to partner with the USD 259 to offer the summer meal program that we have at those sites. One of the things that we changed this year for that, for safety protocols, is that we only provided that meal to the participants in the camp. So we didn't allow the community to actually come in to create some potential opportunities for some other safety concerns. It's just the participants in camp that are getting those, the breakfast and the lunch that's provided through the school district, as well as we've coordinated picking it up internally, so that way it minimizes the number of people who are going out to different sites, delivering food to other areas. It's just our staff that are taking care of that. We also started our summer youth program in District 1, where we have programs on Friday night at our 4 of our rec centers. It's taken off a little bit slower this year. We think part of that is some of the concerns with parents with getting out with everything that's going on in the current environment. But we are continuing to do some advertising for that to raise awareness about what we're doing with those programs. McAdams Rec Center is one of those locations that we're actually doing a summer camp program at this summer. This is the first time we've done a camp there at that site since 2012 or 2013. One of the challenges that we had this year that the Plainview community, the school district didn't open that particular campus. So we were able to transition over, get McAdams up and going, and able to work with housing to be able to provide some transportation for those young people in the Plainview Colvin area, where we bus them over to McAdams each day to be able to participate in camp. So that was something that we were able to work out to be able to continue to serve that community with the summer camp for those who needed it. One of the big projects and the things that we're pushing again is safety. So one of the first activities that they did on site was creating their own mask. So we actually cut out design. They were able to tie-dye, put their name on it, and we use those for safety around the facility, as well as when we take our bus trips to field trips off-site. So that transition is going well, and moving forward, we may potentially have McAdams in conjunction to the Colvin community for us to be able to have summer camps at both of those locations, contingent upon funding that we're able to secure from housing. Tennis Center is another location that's been really active since we got back up and going. We were able to have our high school players who are participating there on site for 5 weeks on Mondays and Tuesdays. A lot of those that we got were those students who their season got cut short in the spring. So we're able to get them in. We made some changes to how we actually scheduled those individuals, where half of them would come at one time, and then we stagger once they come in for the other groups to reduce the number of people that are there on site. We also went online with our new registration software that we did earlier in the year, that they're able to do all of their registration online to minimize the number of people that are in the actual clubhouse. We're keeping the numbers to right around 5 to 6 people at a time in the clubhouse area. Also have entry and exit doors so that people are not crossing coming in and out of the facility. So that helps reduce some of those cross-contamination potentially as well. So that's gone extremely well with us going there. People are excited about getting out and participating and being involved in those programs that we have there on site. Kind of a kudos, our director on site, Sarah Rasmussen, has been really big involved with with USTA, and she was recently awarded an award to them for this year. So she's continued to work with those relationships and expanding services that we have there, and we're looking forward to being able to hold some more state level and high school tournaments there on site at the center as well. And lastly, Lynette Woodard has continued to be a site that we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community coming out for facility rentals, as well as doing some creative programming that we're doing there with the boxing ring that we have on site there. So we're able to do some of those type of lessons with the community there, as well as private music lessons that we offer. The numbers that we have there for attendance through the month of June is with us at a maximum capacity of 45 participants per rental. So it kind of gives you an idea of if we weren't in the current times that we are, and we can actually double those numbers with some of our rentals, we will have quite a bit more impact in the community and the service that we're providing. But we're making those precautions to make sure that we continue to create a safe environment for those individuals who participate in our programs. Kind of the same thing with our boxing and registration classes have been at capacity there with what we're doing and continue to grow those services that we have available for the community. So the division has been really active with real opening up with some of the safety precautions that we put in place. And we, each of our facilities with our summer camps, we do temperature checks every morning with the kids that are coming in. The parents actually check in at the facility at the door so they don't come into the buildings to be able to potentially have any other risk for those who are participating in camps. Our staff are wearing masks during the time that they're there in the common areas, as well as anyone else who's visiting the facility. And then we have programmers that are on site when they're able to maintain that 6 feet social distance. They're not required to have those on in those classes, that especially those who are physical activity classes. So kind of an overview of what we're doing, and I'll open it up if you guys have any questions about anything that we're doing moving forward. We're starting to plan for our next guide that will be coming out within the next month or so, and still continue to work with the library and City Arts to produce that.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Hoyt.
Okay, thank you. Reggie, fantastic. You really got participation going when I was not expecting to see that much this summer. My question going forward is on open streets. What do you plan for September for open streets?
So I'll answer that, Hoyt. We announced that we are not going to have open streets this year. We announced that about a week and a half ago. Maybe it was a week ago.
I missed that.
So
Did the park department, did we get notified?
we put it through.
Everybody?
We put it through the social media on Open Streets, our partner that is doing all of our marketing and promotions and communications.
Okay.
They put that out there.
Okay. Probably
And we made sure to tell our sponsors as well, and we talked to all of our vendors, so they got the word prior to it hitting the media and getting out to the rest of Wichita.
Great. What has Reggie got planned for the rest of this fall?
We're still continuing to look at operating our facilities. We're still taking the same safety precautions that we're doing with increasing the number of cleaning with the cleaning staff that we have there. We have a crew that comes in the evening that does a deep cleaning and sanitizing of the entire facility. Have another group that comes in the morning time frame that cleans again during midday for usage. We have staff that's going through and doing rotating and cleaning between classes so that we make sure that those touch points where people are using on a regular basis are being cleaned and sanitized. We're continuing to stay within phase 2 right now, where we're limiting the maximum number of people that are participating in programs to 45 at a time, and continue to offer wearing masks when you're in the facilities and social distancing, and putting the signage out to show what that is to help people with guiding them when they're in the facilities as well.
Okay. At Linwood, the rec center at Linwood, I know you're anxious to move into the extra space when the library moves out. When is that scheduled to take place?
Don't know if we have an exact time frame on it. I know they were still doing some bill out with the library on when that transition is going to take place. I know we've again some initial conversation on what we envision that space being, and we're looking at how we can do that, and that's going to be contingent on what funding may be available to with that expansion. But yes, we're excited about having extra space to program there.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add in regards to Reggie's report, they've been spending a lot of time on the procedures and processes in regards to make sure everybody's safe in regards to COVID. In fact, we've shared our plan with several folks across the state, and we've gotten nothing but great reviews. We've also shared it with the county health department, and our county health department officials actually made the comment that our process should be the standard for everybody else in the city. So they're doing extra work to make sure everybody's safe. But once we have a situation where we feel like we cannot maintain it and control it, there's definitely an opportunity for us to scale back all of our programs as well, which would be unfortunate, but that might be something we have to do.
All right. Are there any more questions for Reggie? See none. Thank you, Reggie. All right, let's go to golf. Let's let Troy Hendricks present here, and then we can share our ideas and questions.
Okay. Thanks, Eddie. Everybody, I should have received an email with their, we'll go back and talk about the May's round report after we got the final numbers from finance. Rounds were down 28% for year to date at the end of May. Revenue was down 43%, and our net income was down 105%. When you looked at the month comparisons, we were only down about 3,000 rounds in May, with basically only 2 courses open in the month of May. So revenue was down significantly, about 50% for the month. So at the end of May, we weren't doing very well. June, we're still, the rounds at the end of June were down 17% for the year to date. We don't have the financials yet. They haven't completed that. Our rounds for the month of June compared to last year were actually up slightly over last year. From what I pulled from our point of sale system, I show that our revenue for the month of June should be up about $30,000 over last year's month of June, which is very good. When I look at the course utilization, each course in the month of June had 9,432 possible rounds that could be played. Sim booked 68% of theirs, text booked 75% of theirs. Mac booked 54% of their possible tee times, and Auburn Hills booked 55% of theirs. Of those that booked tee times at Sim, 86% of those showed up. Text Consolver, 88% showed up. Mac, 81%, and at Auburn Hills, 91%. So we still have, we averaged 13.5% no-show for all the 4 courses during the month of June. Our memberships are doing well. As of June 30th, we have 995 total golfing memberships that have been sold. 135 of those are adult, 90 of those are couples, 68 are juniors, 589 are seniors, and 113 are young adult passes. If you were to compare that to 2018, so I went back and looked at those numbers, adult passes that would have fallen into that category, we had 76, so we're up 78% there. Couples, we had 22, so we're up 309% there in couples passes. Juniors passes, we had 28, so we're up 143% there. Seniors are down. We had 827. We have 589 now. Young adults are we had 45, where now we have 113. So I know that last year in the month of June and July, we had a lot of people that had the other senior pass There's a lot of them that came in and renewed those even before the expiration date because they weren't sure whether they wanted to go into the new membership. So I know that we'll have a lot of those converting over here in July and by the 1st of August. In the month of June, 30% of the members' rounds were played at Auburn Hills, 27% were played at SIM, 26% at Tex Consolver, and 17% at MAC. What we billed in membership fees in the month of June was $64,790. If you were to take that and take that times 12 months, if we get that was our annual amount for every month, that would be $777,000 roughly annually, which is about $150,000 more than the previous past program brought in 2018. One of the questions that the Golf Advisory Committee asked was, are we selling more senior pass greens fees on weekend mornings versus what we did in the previous plan? It would be nice to say that in the previous plan, since the senior passes weren't good until noon, that we didn't have any senior rounds played in the morning, but I can't say that because our staff overrode the system and rung up greens fees for seniors in the mornings. So we did have some greens fees in those mornings, but we've had a significant amount more from the 1st of April through the end of June. We've had over 1,000 rounds of seniors that have played in the mornings. Are they taking, I think the question was, are they taking regular greens fee tee times without knowing exactly which hour they're playing? They're playing more in the early morning, not so much in the later in the mornings. I don't really think that we're having that much a loss in rounds. I think we're seeing them playing in the riding carts where the people that might have been playing in the morning might not have been. Everybody got an email today asked by the Golf Advisory Committee. I want to know what the year-to-date total for the carts, rental, range, clubhouse, west. Cart for year-to-date at the end of June, $75,000. Usage is $44,000. Lessons is about $1,300. I'm not sure what clubhouse was, so I figured that was probably concessions, so I put concessions on there. That was $97,000 is where we're at. One of the other questions is what is projected for the 2020 total for each of these categories. The way it is determined is we use numbers that were that we have from the first 6 months and added in the last 6 months of 2019 to give us what our projected budget numbers would be. For cart rentals, that would be $780,000, range $92,000, lessons $7,000, and concessions $304,000. What is the year-to-date total for regular greens fees for 2020? Greens fees are $555,000 roughly. Season pass memberships are $291,898. These all go into greens fees when you look at the budget purposes. They're not separated out. Greens fees and then.
Hang on, Troy. Hey, Dale.
Sorry.
Can you mute yourself?
My mouse died and I was panicking another one. My apologies.
No problem. Can you just go ahead and mute?
I would if I could get my mouse to work, but I'll just be quiet.
That works too. Carry on, Troy.
That's okay. What is the projected 2020 total for regular greens fees? As I said, these numbers are derived by using the first 6 months of 2020 and the last 6 months of 2019. So we're projecting our greens fees and membership fees be a little over $2 million. Are these numbers based on the projected $507,000 deficiency for 2020? And that is yes. And as you heard from Elizabeth earlier today, not all the budget numbers are available yet. We can see they haven't given us the line item information yet, and that probably won't be out until end of July, maybe mid-July. So that ends my report, Eddie.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions for Troy here?
I got a couple on the numbers. The total rounds for 2020 are down what percent?
Through which month?
For the total for the year.
For the end of July or the end of June, 17%.
And revenue is, green fee revenue is down 33%. Is that,
I don't have the June numbers yet, so I don't know what it would be through the end of June.
oh, your report says that green fee revenues for the year were down 33%. Your total member rounds, you have that in the report. Is that just for Auburn Hills, or you don't have a total for 2020?
Our total greens fee rounds.
The reason I ask is that there's a concern that members are eating up weekend green fees that used to be sold at regular rate, and so the net result is a loss of income. Are you showing that?
Okay. So you're asking about the membership. When I talked about Auburn Hills had 30% of the rounds for memberships for plated Auburn Hills.
Well, I'm just looking for big picture numbers here. Total revenue versus total green fees versus total concession year to date compared to the previous year, so we get an idea whether the membership thing is working.
So you're talking about a report that we handed out at the golf committee meeting.
Well, that was a very confusing array of numbers. I just want the big number. What was the total number of rounds year to date? How much money did that generate? What were the regular green fee revenues year to date?
The only thing that I actually have revenue on is through the end of May, because I don't have the revenue numbers for the month of June yet.
Okay, so he's got a month left. Okay.
So what I'm able to give you is that I gave you the information pertaining to our rounds for the month of June, but I don't have any of the revenue to go with it other than what I have in our point of sale system for the month of June, which shows me that we were up in revenue for the month of June by $30,000 over last year for the month of June.
But where are we at year to date?
Year to date, in comparison to last year,
through June.
How about if all you guys can continue on with the Golf Advisory Committee portion, Eddie? I'll look that up real quick. How's that?
Well, I'm going to make another couple of points. I'm concerned about our lack of support for the Golf Marathon event that's this Friday. I got the email flyer from Golf Wichita outlining various things going on, the Wichita Open Junior Parent Golf, and never mentioned this event, which is a huge event fundraising-wise for the city of Wichita. It likely will bring in $20,000. It'll be all spent in Wichita Golf Division for green fees, and the division's not apparently promoting it at all. That's a little disturbing to me that we don't get on board with one of our major partners, First Tee and MV Marketing, who are going to bring a $20,000 check to us, and they don't get a mention in our promotion. Is there some reason we're not doing that?
I know that Corey sent that information to us, I think, last week.
But what is our marketing department doing to help them raise more money, which all comes back to you? I guess we're doing nothing. Point is, we should do that. We should really engage our partners who are doing great things for our golf division. I can't imagine a single event that brings in as much money to the golf division as that golf marathon, which is, I think, 25 grand last year.
I'm looking here at my emails from Corey Novascone. The last one I have is on June the 16th when I gave him the date and told him it was blocked off for them.
And have you communicated with him or your marketing person as to what we can do?
They put together their flyer, and they would, as they did last year, and they sent it to us.
All right, my point is, we're not doing enough. Our golf division should be much more actively engaged in helping to support those singular events that raise awareness, provide golf fees for juniors, and we're kind of mute on it. You know, you got the Wichita Open mentioned in your flyer, a parent junior golf tournament, and we ignore this one. All right, that's my point. I'm disappointed that we don't get more on board. We should have perhaps even a fundraising effort on behalf of the staff to participate in the tournament. But all right.
Good point.
Do you think, Dale, we should blast that out on our social media channels, or what did you have in mind exactly?
We have a marketing department, which was, I mean, they showed us at the Golf Advisory Committee, Eddie, that's part of that raft of material we got that showed all the things we're doing in marketing. None of them have a financial impact anywhere close to what this marathon golf tournament does. I'm concerned why that one is singled out and left out of the agenda. Yes, absolutely. Our marketing department should be contacting Corey, should be contacting MV Marketing and asking what can we do to help drive more people to that tournament and raise more money for junior golf. They make no money off that. It all goes to the city. A singular event that deserves a much higher priority on our marketing agenda.
I will look into it and see why we didn't send something out.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Troy?
This is Emma, if I may. Oh, sorry.
I have a question about Mack Park. I understand the carts at Mack Park are in horrible shape. The batteries are all dead. We're not spending money to replace them, and we're losing cart revenue. Is there a plan to get that fleet operational so that course can function at a higher level?
We are in the process of buying batteries for the course based on our numbers for the month of June and revenue. From what I was able to pull out of our system, I authorized Keith to start buying some cart batteries, yes.
That's good. Glad to hear that.
Alejo, I see you raised your hand here. Go ahead.
This is Emma. So I was able to put a number real quick when you guys were talking about June number.
Hey, Emma.
So last year, oh, can you hear me?
Emma, sorry, 1 second. Alejo, did you have a comment?
Sorry.
I guess not.
He said, hey, I don't know if you can hear me. I guess we can't hear him.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything. I don't know about everybody else. But
Okay, Eddie?
yeah.
Based on, I just pulled up some numbers out of our point of sale system. Our year-to-date revenue for 2020 is $1,612,268. That's through the end of June. And based on last year at the end of June, we had $2,160,512, which is that approximately that $500,000 that we talked about at the Golf Advisory Committee meeting when Sean Sandiford was there. So,
Of that 1.6, how much of that is regular green fee revenue?
Do you have that on hand, Troy? Or
yeah, I will in just a minute.
Okay.
But I don't want to take the committee's time. You can email me that later. I would like to know whether that membership plan is adversely affecting the sale of regular green fees. That can only be determined by comparing percentage-wise the percent of revenue that's coming from regular green fees and that's coming from members. So I asked for that numerous times, and I can't quite seem to express it in a way that Mr. Hendricks understands it. That's a simple question. It's for the purpose of evaluating the membership plan. And the same with
I
concession.
provided that information through the end of May at the last Golf Advisory Committee meeting on that summary sheet.
It looks like Alejo hopped back on. Alejo, is your audio working now? This is one of those times where I wish everyone was together and technology was easier.
No kidding.
Okay. Emma, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but the floor is yours.
Oh, sorry. No worries. I was gonna say regarding the numbers you guys were looking for. I did find it through overall, and keep in mind the number is gonna be different from what Troy has pulling from point of sale, just because we do have expenses that doesn't track our revenues. It doesn't track through point of sale. So the Munis, which is our ERP system for finances, is a little bit different. And I was able to pull all the information you guys were asking about. Roughly about for last year is 1.8 million for revenue as of June last year. And this year is about 1.2. So it's about 600,000 differences. And your question regarding, let me go back to the screen, about green fee as of this year for the entire golf course is about 1 million. It's $1,007,912. That's how much. I'm sorry. Let me go back next screen. Is yeah, that's right. It's $1,007,912 for green fees as of June for all the courses. Is that what you guys were asking for?
I'm not sure. Do you have how much regular green fee revenue was, as what the percent of total revenue that regular green fees? No, of your total revenue. What percent is regular green fees this year? What percent was regular green fees last year, year to date?
I'm sure I can send it to you. I mean, I haven't put it together.
That's fine. Why don't I touch base with you? I'm sorry, who am I speaking with?
This is Emma. I'm the park accountant.
How about if we touch base later and I can clarify what we were talking about?
Yeah, sure. I'll send your email.
Okay.
I think, Emma, please send it out to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thanks, Emma. Is there any further questions for Troy?
I'd like to, Hoyt referenced earlier our maintenance costs versus our admin marketing budgets over the last 10 years. And if we could get a description of that, appears to be the case that we have kept our maintenance budget at an extremely low level and our administrative and marketing budgets have gone up. It's amazing what they've done to preserve the courses. They're doing a fantastic job. The courses are in great shape using baling wire and whatever to keep the equipment together. This is one of those questions about park board oversight as to where we spend our money and how we spend it. We'd like to explore that for the future budget year.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Are we still, are we still not taking reservations if somebody just walks in? Do we have to do it online?
Nope, that changed the 26th of June.
Okay, so it's opened up now.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie, we were going to talk about the Golf Advisory Committee attendance policy.
Yeah, I thought you brought up a good point a couple weeks ago. Well, let's start back in February when we were to reach out to our appointees and see if they were still okay with serving on the committee. The answer was a resounding sure, I think. And nothing really changed in terms of attendance for one reason or the other, whatever it may be. I don't know how this looks, but maybe we and I'm not sure of the bylaws, Dale. I think you would have a better grasp of that. But is it possible to have 2 appointees per park board member? That was brought up to me earlier today. I think that, well, actually it was brought up prior to COVID, and then everything kind of happened and whirlwind of what we're going through. But I think that might be something interesting to look at, to get fresh faces on the committee and hopefully more attendance. I don't think right now that the voice of Wichita Golf is being heard. I think we've got some talented people out there that want to serve and want their voices heard. So I don't know what everyone else thinks about that, or if it's even legal. But that's my 2 cents. I think that would be a step in the right direction to inject a little, energy into the Golf Advisory Committee.
Eddie, if I could clarify on the bylaws, they specifically said that a member shall be removed if they miss 3 consecutive meetings or don't participate in 50% of the meetings over the course of a year. We have 2 current members who have met that threshold and should be removed. I communicated to my council member, Councilmember Claycomb, asking that I would suggest somebody to replace the person that she had appointed who has not been to 3 meetings in a row. And the appointee of, I think, Councilmember Brandon Johnson says, I look back to 2018, this individual's been at 1 Golf Advisory Committee meeting in that whole period of time. And the other appointee has missed the last 3 and has fallen below the 50%. So if we enforce the bylaws, I don't know who that is enforced by, if that's by the GAC itself, to remove those members. Councilmember Claycomb said she had touched base with her appointee and said that she wanted to be reappointed. I'm not sure that's legal. I don't know. If the bylaws say you're off the board and says shall be removed, unless they appeal to the body. So I agree, Eddie. At the end of the day, it's just about having people who will show up and participate in the discussion so we can get good advocacy for public golf. That's all we're looking for. It's nothing personal with anybody. It's a difficult thing to make meetings. I understand that. If you can't serve, then turn it over to somebody else.
Right.
So I'd just like to respond to that. I spoke with Councilwoman Cindy Claycomb, I think last week or the week before, and she indicated that she was going to reappoint the woman who she had previously appointed to the GAC, and her name's Debbie Birch. So she intends to reappoint her next chance she gets, which I think might even be at tomorrow's council meeting.
So you're going to reappoint the person who hasn't been for the meetings the last 3 times and has missed both thresholds of required attendance. Because she has some assurance, and I'm fine. It's her appointment, your appointment. That's fine if that's.
That's correct. Her appointment is my appointment. So to be honest, I haven't been necessarily monitoring the attendance, and I wasn't aware of the threshold of missing events. So I think going forward, we'll have to look at that more closely.
Thanks, Ty. Anybody else on this topic about attendance or the possibility of appointing another member?
This is Hoyt. Just one thought in that the way it was chartered, and it came from the city council, that was 1 appointee. So I guess the city council would have to change it to 2 appointees if they wanted their advisory board that way.
Okay, what's the process to get that on the docket if everyone's in favor of it? If not, that's okay.
What are you proposing, Andy? I forget.
That the park board member would have 2 appointees to the Golf Advisory Committee as opposed to 1.
I would be supportive of that, but with an emphasis on the attendance requirement being enforced, which we can start doing at the GAC meetings going forward. Is there a GAC meeting scheduled?
I don't think there is right now, Dale. Troy, did we set a meeting? Or I don't have one on my calendar here in the next few weeks.
No, we did not.
Okay.
We're required by the council's direction to meet
every 6 weeks, wasn't it?
every 6 weeks. And that's been
Yeah.
ignored for a long time here. We're going to start enforcing that as well.
Well, if it's mandated by the city council, we have to. So we're going to have to get one on the calendar.
I would like, it'd be nice if it was scheduled and a prospective schedule going forward as to that, so it is in place and not just at the discretion of the staff when they think we should meet.
I think that's reasonable. Troy, are you in agreement with that?
Yes, sir. We'll get something put together and we can email it out to the committee for them to review.
Thank you. Another thing I'd like to bring up is, you know, in these golf advisory committee meetings, I don't know how many people watch or attend or whatever it may be, but we talk about a lot of good things, but there seems to be no sense of direction. We kind of spin our wheels in there a little bit. I'm wondering if we have not necessarily a subcommittee, but different topics that these appointed members, you know, focus on. So whether it may be, you know, course conditions or concessions or the debt, whatever it may be, they get to focus on that and then present at each committee meeting. What do you guys think about that?
I'm supportive of anything you do to bring substance to the agenda. That has been missing. The observation was made by, I think it was Mr. Ramsey in a previous incarnation, that the Golf Advisory Committee had no agenda. It didn't have anything to talk about. I think we've shown at the last two there is a lot to talk about and a lot of discretionary decisions to be made and to help drive, preserve our great golf system. So I agree, Eddie. I think that's generating something of substance, but you have to reassure that when that's done, it comes to this body and it is considered and it is forwarded to the council and it's acknowledged, and not just spinning your wheels with nobody paying attention. So,
right. I think that would be a step in the right direction. It would come through the park board still. But, you know, I think you use the word substance, and I like that it would give it a little bit more backbone, I think.
Eddie?
Something along those lines. Go ahead, Troy.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but a suggestion, and this happens in some other boards where you actually have a secretary that kind of manages the agenda, manages the dates, makes all those things in regards to scheduling and that kind of stuff. And then you have some other folks that are maybe in charge of different areas. Maybe you might have somebody who's in charge of golf conditions, course conditions, customer service, somebody who's reviewing all the financials. So maybe there's actually expertise in each one of the folks or responsibility assigned to each one of those folks. I think that's one of the difficult things that, as a staff member, I used to go to quite a few of them, and I think I went to the last one for about 3/4 of the meeting. And I think what we need is those folks to bring those ideas and thoughts to the table in a way that we can manage those a little bit better. And staff could probably respond to that a little bit better as well. So just a suggestion. I don't know if other experiences that you guys have gone through that process, but on other boards that I've been on, there's definitely different roles that different folks have on that board.
Excellent suggestion.
Yeah, I like it. So what's our next step then? Do we need to make a recommendation to the city council for this to happen, for 2 appointed members per park board member? Do we need to go to city council for approval of a secretary, or is that kind of determined inside the GAC?
I'll let Elizabeth, but if it does require taking us to council, we'd be happy to do a presentation to council to make any amendments or changes to the board. But I think in regards to individual responsibilities, assignments, I think that's up to the board how they manage that.
Okay.
You're in.
And I'm unmuted. Okay.
The Golf Advisory Committee bylaws clearly state that it will be a board comprised of 8 members, and that was based upon the council's definition of what this board was to be. So yes, you need to go back to the city council if you want to expand it. Also, I would point out the attendance policy that the Board of Park Commissioners put into place for the Golf Advisory Committee provides that anyone who does not meet the attendance requirements is to be removed by the park board. So regardless of who appoints the person, if they are not attending, if they do not meet the attendance requirements, the bylaws of the Golf Advisory Committee say that the park board, after due notice to the member, and due notice is a written notice from the clerk of the park board, which would be Penny, and once written notice is provided to that member who's not met the attendance requirements, then the park board is who takes action to remove them. So if you want to take action on the people who aren't attending, it's yours to take.
Okay, is there some sort of warning email? Hey, you're getting close to your threshold here. You need to show up to your meeting or be removed, or does that act as the warning, as the bylaws state?
Eddie, the bylaws say they shall be removed, but they have the opportunity to appeal to the park board. So I would make a motion that the park board enforce those bylaws and call for the removal of the 2 members that have not met the attendance requirement. They will then have the opportunity to request a hearing before the park board within 10 days after the notice period. That's what the bylaws prescribe. That's the process, and we ought to follow the process.
I think you probably should notify them, and then at your next park board meeting, take a vote on removing them.
It does say due notice, you're right, so that would be appropriate for the park board to, well, who does the notice?
Penny would do that. It goes to, it's written notice made by the secretary of the park board. I mean, she's the one that makes sure it gets delivered. Sorry about that, Penny.
What would the language of that notice say?
You're fired.
That's not set forth in the bylaws. That's something that can easily be drafted as a notice of removal. We've got them for all boards. A lot of departments participated with that in the past, doing that. But it does say the notice is to particularize the basis for removal, the non-attending member. And
Dale, would you like to?
Their right to request a hearing or an appeal.
Dale, would you like to amend your motion then?
You know, I'm reading this bylaws language. It's written so poorly that it says any member of the committee shall be removed after due notice and a hearing of non-attendance at 3 consecutive meetings or for absence of more than 50% of the meetings in a 12-month period. That makes no sense.
It's either one. You either don't attend 3 consecutive meetings or you've missed more than 50%.
It says
You can
hearing,
miss enough meetings and none of them be 3 in a row.
but it calls for a hearing. When does that hearing take place?
In front of the park board.
Okay, so is that what we're doing right now? Is this a hearing?
No, you have to give notice.
Okay,
So
so, all
that member will
right,
have the
all right.
right to appear.
I got you. Okay, Eddie, I'll change my motion. I move that the park board schedule a hearing at its next meeting to consider the removal of GAC members who have not met the attendance requirement.
Can we
Okay.
specify who those are for the record, please?
Well, should be verified, I think, by the staff. I did my own research looking at the minutes. I think it's Dr. Williams and Ms. Birch. This would give them a chance to revisit it if their appointing authority wants them to continue. They could bring that to the park board, but attendance is required going forward.
Okay. So we've got a motion on the table. I'll go ahead and second it for the purposes of further discussion, so it doesn't die for a lack of a second.
Well, may I point one thing out is we send out the notice saying you haven't met the requirements of attendance. And then if that member wants a hearing, they have to request it within 10 days from receipt of the notice. So you could have a situation where the member gets notice and just says, oh, well, okay, I'm off, and goes on down the road. So they have to request the hearing. But if they request it, you have to have the hearing.
Okay, so it's not mandatory that we have a hearing on everyone who has missed 3 in a row or 50% of the meetings, correct?
Well, that's what your motion that's on the floor is for. But what I'm saying is you send out the notice to the non-complying members, and they then have to request a hearing. The hearing is not automatic. They have to request it. And they need to be informed that they have that right, which would be part of the letter that notifies.
And so the notice to the GAC members who have not been attending regularly, it would lay out attendance requirements and say, FYI, you haven't met this threshold, and so your options are the following. I mean, my concern is that these people, I mean, I wish they were maybe a little more committed to the cause, but for all I know, they're not aware of attendance requirements.
Oh, no, they are aware.
Yeah.
I know they're aware.
Yes. I remember when we drafted these and a copy was distributed to each of them, and I have to go back and look at my notes, but they were definitely given notice of it.
Okay, but again,
Over the last couple of
notice.
years,
What's that, Hoyt?
a couple of years, I've made phone calls to remind them.
The bylaws of the GAC were amended in 2017 to put this attendance policy in the bylaws. And they were all given new copies of that. So it's been there for quite a while, quite a long time.
So our motion just needs to be that we need to execute that portion of the bylaw, correct?
That's correct.
So I need to make a motion to give written notice that their attendance is in jeopardy. That's it, right?
Attendance is in jeopardy. You mean their notice that they will be removed due to their lack of attendance?
Yes.
And you should inform them of a opportunity for a hearing, although the language doesn't make it discretionary. It says shall be removed after due notice and a hearing. It doesn't say whether.
But if they don't want a hearing, they don't have to have a hearing.
They don't
just
have
say, "I
to
don't wanna
have
do it."
that,
No.
but it
It's-
goes on to say the committee shall inform the member of the right to request a hearing. You have to have a due process hearing.
That witness, yours says that? Maybe I've got an old version here.
No, under attendance, it's the third paragraph.
Okay, I'm looking at the original bylaws from 2016, I think. I don't think I've got the current one. I'd love to see that if you could send
I
that.
thought I sent you the current one, Dale.
Well, I got mine from a former member. It may not be.
I emailed you the current one when you sent me an email asking for it.
Okay, my bad if I'm not looking at a current version. So you're saying it does provide the discretion of the appointee to request a hearing?
Yes.
That's
and
fine. That's great. Well, I'll go back to Eddie.
Current bylaws are dated May 30, 2017.
I like
Signed
Eddie's.
by Hoyt, who was the president of the GAC, and
That's right.
Michelle. Trying to read.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Michelle was the
who
clerk.
was the clerk? I was trying to read her signature, sorry. So
Go ahead, Dale.
So your idea, Eddie, I think is appropriate, that they should just be directed, the park board should direct the staff to execute the requirements of the attendance policy as articulated in the revised GAC bylaws.
Okay, is that your substitute motion?
I'd make that as a substitute motion.
Okay, we will
I'll
vote on
second.
that first. We've got a motion and a second on the substitute motion here. Is there any further discussion on this? See none. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Now, do we need to, Penny, do we need to make a motion to take a recommendation to council about adding another appointee?
Yes, council needs to change that, and then you'll have to change your bylaws. Well, the GAC will have to change their bylaws. Because right now it says a committee of 8.
So I'll make a motion then, Eddie.
Right.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Yep, we got you. What was your motion exactly, Troy?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's exactly what you said. So we make a motion for each park board member to assign 2 golf advisory committee members.
I will second
Just
that.
1. Okay.
I'm sorry, you mean to take that to the city council?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, don't we have to make a motion for it to go to city council, right?
Yes.
That was my motion.
Since the council was the one that created this committee, set the parameters, they're gonna have to be the ones to expand it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why my motion is to make that motion so we can take it to city council so they can expand it or not.
Okay, I will second that.
I have a question on that,
Go ahead, Dale.
and I hope maybe these bylaws are dated here. On their organization, it said the GAC is comprised of 8 members, 7 appointed by park board members, and one appointed by each member, and 1 member of the board of park commissioners. There are 7 park commissioners, are there not?
Correct.
And there are 8 members of the GAC, the 8th member being appointed by the I don't know where that other member comes from. Oh, no, the other one is a member of the Board of Park Commissioners.
Correct.
So does that turn into 2 members from the Board of Park Commissioners, or you just keep 1 member of the park board on it along with 2 members each appointed by the 7 commissioners?
Personally, I don't see a reason for 2 park board commissioners needing to be on there.
I agree totally. So it would only apply to the appointments individually by each park board member.
Correct.
That gives the president or the chairman quite a bit of authority. They're getting 3 votes, but in fact, if you're going to...
I'd be happy to step down, Dale.
Well, maybe that's worth considering why there's a member of the park board on there and also that member gets to appoint a member.
I'm happy to step down. I want my people in there that know what they're talking about, that eat, sleep, breathe golf, see it every single day. I want their input in that. So I'm happy to do it.
Well, I think you're very qualified to be on there, Eddie, but other members of the park board may not be as passionate about it, and that's a valid point then. Is there a reason that a member of the park board was designated to be on the GAC? Is it a communications thing or a...
Yeah, I think it was a communications thing. Is that right, Penny?
That's pretty much
Yes,
the job of that is to be the liaison, to go back and forth, sharing information, giving updates, setting up the presentations or developing the request to staff. So that's what we wanted, to get that representation from the park board. I think that's why that is on there.
Once again, the council created this. The minutes from the council meeting that created this board are many pages long. I'd have to refresh myself. I've read through them more than once, but it's been a while. But I believe this setup was what the council decreed from the bench and what was voted on by the council. And I believe it did include the 1 member of the park board to kind of be the liaison between and report back to the park board. Hoyt did that for quite a while, and he would report. Now, that's Eddie, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's somebody who can report back to the park board what's going on at the golf advisory committee.
So we still have 2 park board commissioners sitting currently on the GAC. Dale, I'm happy to step down.
No, as a matter of fairness, I think you should serve, but you should be limited to 1 appointee. That gives you 2 votes. As every other park board member would have 2 appointees, which are 2 votes. That would just make it fair across the board. You'd bring an extra member as well, but that would
Sure,
just
I see what you're saying.
That's just fair. I mean, I think it's valid to have a member of the park board by ex officio on there.
Dale, you're on the board as an appointee of a council member.
I'm on the GAC as an appointee of park board member Hoyt Hillman. My appointee to the park board meeting is Greg Ferris, who I retained, who was the previous appointee of the previous mayor, but I've kept Greg on because he's very knowledgeable about golf.
Well then, yes, there are 2 members of the park board on there now, and I believe that question came up, and there is no prohibition to you being both a park board member and an appointed member of the GAC.
But like Eddie, I'd be happy to step down and appoint 2 members. That would be fine with me. There are folks who are ready and willing to serve, but unless that is prescribed in ordinance or by specific city council policy, I wouldn't change it.
Well, if you no longer want to serve, there's a process for you vacating your position and having Mr. Hillman then would have to appoint someone to replace you since you're his appointee.
Well, Dale, let me respond to what you said. I think you're very knowledgeable about golf and other things, but we won't get into that. And you share the passion for it. So I think we need somebody like you on it. I think it would hurt the Golf Advisory Committee and quite frankly the community of Wichita Golf if you step down. I think I have full support behind me on that.
Well,
So-
I appreciate that, but I think the idea of adding members is extremely valid, and it really would be a timely thing to do to get more voices there reflective of the golf committee. I've looked a lot at Lincoln, Nebraska. They have a similar committee. It's a mayor's committee on advisory committee, and it's made up specific representatives of the golf public in that community, which this group has not really reflected. As you noted, it's not adding another 7 members who are somehow more connected to the golf community would solve the problem, I think. That's a good idea, and I'd support that.
Well, I think Troy left, but I believe the motion would still be on the table. Penny, would you mind reading that motion back to the board? If not, I can make a new motion.
He just said to do what you said, so whatever you said.
Well,
Basically.
Penny, are you able to guide us on this?
He's asking me what.
You're calling it.
Yeah, I'm back on. I don't know much about the Golf Advisory Committee. I am not able to give you any direction at all.
Okay, then I'll just go ahead and make another motion that was basically the same as Troy's. Since he left, I'm not sure what that does to the motion on the table, but I think I'm going to make the exact same one that he just made.
Well, you can vote on his motion, vote it down, bring your motion forward, and clean that up. Just
Well, his motion, I believe, Dale, was to make a recommendation to City Council that the park board members would have 2 appointees as opposed to 1 on the Golf Advisory Committee.
And you seconded that?
Yes.
And let's vote on it. I think that's good. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Eddie, just to clarify, then you would be advocating for a 15-member board, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
No, it'd be 16 members, would it not?
No, 15.
No.
7 times 2, 14, plus the park board member would be 1, 15.
That the park board member doesn't get an extra appointee.
No.
Okay, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's just clarification there. So we've got a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion on this topic? See none. We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Anything else on golf, guys? All right, let's move forward. Wichita Parks Foundation update. Troy, are you still with us?
Yes, I am still with us. That was exciting. That was a lot of fun. All right, so I think we got 3 or 4 items, and we can go through them pretty quickly. In regards to the Wichita Park Foundation, I really don't have an update. They are looking to give away the Red, White, and Boom event as a fundraiser for somebody else to actually do that event. So that's something we're going to be working on it throughout the next year. Other than that, they had their retreat, and I think they're refocusing their goals and really working on having really good processes in regards to Plates for Parks and how we use those funds. That's all I have for the Wichita Parks Foundation.
A quick question. When I'm not playing golf, I'm walking my dog, and I use the dog parks a lot. They're so popular. They're a tremendous asset. There's been a lot of questions from the folks up there why there's not a shaded area. I go to the one at Meridian Park, and is there a possibility for the foundation to have a fundraising effort to perhaps put some kind of a pavilion or something that provides shaded area for the folks who come there? In the middle of summer, it's almost unusable. There's no trees in it. But how might that be funded through the foundation? Is that appropriate?
Yes, that's definitely appropriate. I think if there's a group that wants to organize and meet with the Park Foundation, they don't necessarily fundraise for those organizations. They are just the fiduciary holders of any kind of fundraising. So anybody who wants to fundraise, they have to do that on their own. A couple things just to be clear about that about that park is that it's actually on a landfill. And so one of the issues and one of the problems we haven't had the opportunity to put a stage structure up yet is because it has to be built up. And then we also have to get it approved by the state since it's actually a landfill. So it's not necessarily just the Parks and Recreation's decision on it. It's not necessarily just the city of Wichita decision on it, but we have to work with the state in regards to how that cap is managed and how we make sure that we don't damage the cap that's over the landfill. But it definitely can be done.
All right, I'll pursue that. Thank you.
Hey, Troy, regarding the Red, White, and Boom event, have we been in contact with anybody, or has anybody reached out? Interested parties? What's the latest on that? Do we have somebody in mind?
I think there's some people in mind, but I don't think nothing's really has moved forward. When they had the retreat, what the Wichita Parks Foundation really wanted to do was focus on the Plates for Parks. They feel like they've been biting off more than they can chew, and they're really not necessarily set up for events. The first 4 years that we've done Red, White, and Boom was really carried on by the Parks and Recreation Department through the Wichita Parks Foundation to get more exposure to the Wichita Parks Foundation. But I think they are on event overload and really don't want to be doing a whole lot of events. And so I think they'll be reaching out to some folks, sending out some feelers. But if you know of anybody who might be interested in taking over the event, and I think they're just ready and willing to just hand it over. So something to think about.
When you say hand it over, does that mean operationally everything?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we can definitely have the Parks and Recreation Department be part of that. It just depends on how we want to set up the relationship.
Right. And certainly it's dictated upon the guidelines set in place by the governor, the mayor, the board of health, et cetera.
Well, let me make this clear. They're not having it this year, and that
Okay.
it'll depend on what happens next year in regards to COVID.
Okay, so they want to hand it off altogether.
Most definitely, I think that's their desire,
Okay.
and that would start next year for the next year's 4th of July.
Okay. Well, I have somebody in mind, but we can talk offline about that.
Okay. The next item is O.J. Watson.
Hey, I have somebody in mind too.
All right.
We can all get together and talk about it.
Sounds great.
All right, Hoyt, thank you. O.J. Watson, the Four Seasons Shelter, we had, I think I shared that with you last time. It came up over budget. We're looking at value engineering, looking at some things that we can reduce. Maybe it's reducing the footprint or reducing or changing some of the materials, so something a little bit less expensive. So we're looking at those. So maybe we could go out and rebid or actually renegotiate the bids to accept them. So it's a long process because we've got so many things on the table right now, but that is where we're at with that. Everything else with O.J. Watson is performing well in regards to COVID. I think Brian is doing some excellent activities out there. Seems like, and it sounds like, the kayaking and canoeing activities and classes are going really well.
Excellent. Any questions on O.J. Watson? See none. Aquatics Master Plan.
So as I mentioned in regards to the budget discussions, Phase 1A and B are rolling forward. Contractors are out there actually right now. We have fencing up. We have 4 pools that are closed, and you actually can see some dirt moving. I think the folks that are supportive of McAdams Pool, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's McAfee Pool, because the name is now changed. Are really excited about the improvements, and we're looking at already starting to find some programming, finding some support, and finding some donors to help with swim lessons next summer. And I think if we do some great push with our marketing and with actually working and reaching into each one of those neighborhoods and those groups, getting those folks to the pool, I think we'll have a great summer next summer. I don't have anything else in regards to the Aquatics Master Plan.
I think I asked that on mute. I don't know if anyone heard that. So, anybody else? All right. President's update. I don't have one. So we'll go to the director's update.
One thing I wanted to make sure to give a recognition is to the Mo Conley Tennis Foundation. They have donated $400,000, actually $403,000 to the upgrades to that tennis center. So it's going to include some pickleball courts, resurfacing all of the current courts, adding 3 more courts. That addition of 3 more courts will give us the opportunity to have larger tournaments and actually have us to the same level as some of the other tennis centers across the country, and we'll be able to host larger USTA, United States Tennis Association tournaments. So a great thank you to them. It's also going to kind of add a few other things. I think we're going to put in a shade structure, and if we have enough money, we're going to add a few more bathrooms. There'll probably be single stall bathrooms with access from the outside, but that just increases the amount of restrooms that we have with the increase of the tennis courts. So a huge thank you. $403,000 ends up being about 25% of the budget for this project. That's unheard of. It's really, when we've gone out there and asked for folks for support, usually we get it, but it's not to this extent of this amount. So I'm going to say it again, $403,000 these folks brought to the table to make improvements to the infrastructure of tennis.
Fantastic. fantastic.
I second what Hoyt did. That's awesome. All
So
right. Is there?
I did one of these when I heard about it. Pretty exciting.
Oh, well, yeah.
All right.
All right.
That's all I got.
Is there anything else that needs to be talked about today or put on next month's meeting agenda?
So there was a question in regards to the single track, and we'll make sure that we have those folks invited. We'll get their PowerPoint or whatever presentation that they have, and we'll make sure that's available prior and during the meeting. So that's not a problem.
Can I get Emma's phone number for a follow-up on that question about the golf revenues?
Dale, I'll email it to you because I don't want to put it over the airwaves here that everybody will hear it and see it. So I'll email it to you, Dale.
Thank you.
All right.
Eddie, I do have, Eddie?
Go ahead, Hoyt.
This is Hoyt. Just something a little off. I know that the 150th anniversary was being planned and put off several times. What's now?
Hoyt, you kind of broke up there.
Okay. Well, excuse me. Let's try it again. The 150th anniversary, I know it was put off several times. Is it still planned for November?
I can address at least the part that involves Wichita festivals. We're unveiling a new event called Wonderfall. That's November 5 through 8 that's scheduled, and it's the culminating event in the city's and the county's 150th birthday celebration. So it's a 4-day street festival along St. Francis. So we're still planning on doing that for the time being.
Okay, good. That helps answer my question. Thank you very much, Ty.
Sure.
Anything else? See none. We will adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.